I bid a good day to you, madam. We are from Group 3 AFT2103 Business Statistic L4T1. I am Vigneshwari Murthy here. My metric number is 820826061. We have 6 members in our group including me. There are Adiba, Siti Nur Azriwani, Adziro, Siti Nur Zafira and Muhammad Akmal. Today we are here to present our group presentation. The field of statistics is the science of learning from the data. Statistical knowledge helps us use the right method to gather the info, employ the right analysis and effectively present the result. Statistics may be a cruel process behind how we make the discoveries in science, make decisions supported the data and make prediction. Statistics allow us understand the subject deeper. Objective of the assignment is provide method and organizing and simplifying the data so that they are significant the comprehensible. A large array of the figure makes reading traditional and is difficult to be interpreted. However, when figures are present in the form of graph histogram, their essence may be a graph visually in a glance. The second objective for this assignment is enhance the ability of student on interpreting data or any matter related with the statistical calculation. The understanding of the correlation seems to be quite important as it can help students to learn the relationship between the variable, which is depending variable and independent variable. Now we are going to see the data arrangement of our group. We are selected a data which is death and injuries in road accident reported by Malaysia 2018. We collected the data from the Investigation and Enforcement branch of Royal Malaysia Police Traffic Department. The data collected is 32. The categorical variable from this data is state. The numerical variable is injuries and death. The data we collected in frequency distribution grouped that data. Step 1. I find the number of classes. I selected the number more than 32. So I calculate to the power 6 equals to 64. The K is 6. The second step is to determine the class width. Formula to find class width is maximum entry minus minimum entry divided by number of classes. So the maximum entry in the data is 626. The minimum entry is 7 divided by number of classes, which means 6. Then I get 269.83 round up to 270. Therefore, class width is 270. The fourth step is to find the midpoint. The formula of the midpoint is lower class limit plus upper class limit divided by 2. I use this method for every classes. For example, in first class midpoint is 141.5. Next is find the lower boundary and upper boundary. The formula for lower boundary is lower limit minus 0.5. For upper boundary is upper limit plus 0.5. The fifth step is to find the relative frequency. The formula is frequency of each classes divided by total frequency. To check the answers for relative frequency, all the relative by classes must get 1. I get 1 for relative frequency. The last part of mine is cumulative frequency. The cumulative frequency of a class is the sum of the frequency for that class and all previous classes. The cumulative frequency of the last class is equals to the sample size n. Cumulative frequency of the last class is sample size n equals to 32.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Siti Nozafira binti Mustaza and my metric number is A20A19CA. I will present my part, which is graphical representation. First of all, the data we use our group has been select graph and chart that correspond the selected data. We create histogram graph and pie chart to obtain complete data on graph and chart. Based on histogram graph, this graph is the most commonly used graph to show frequency distribution. The frequency data placed on each class is described by the use of bar. The higher bar, the greater frequency of class data value being assigned. The table below shows the class frequency and midpoint as the data of road accident report. This histogram graph shows the data from the number of accident case that has been recorded in Malaysia in 2018. This graph shows the order of the data that has been prepared based on the table that has been given. Here we can see at the midpoint 141.5, the frequency position is 10. Then at the midpoint 411.5, the frequency up to 13. After that, the frequency slow down from the midpoint 681.5. The frequency position is 5. At the midpoint 951.5, the frequency is 3 and drop to midpoint 1221.5 and frequency is 0. And then at the midpoint 1461.5, the frequency up to 1. For pie chart, as we know, this chart is derived from the similarity to a pie, as is has a round shape and shows the data in slice. This pie chart is suitable for use when the calculate data is in the form of percentage. Pie chart provide data as an easy to understand overview. Based on the analysis that has been done, as many as 12,625 people we have been involved in road accident has been recorded in 2018. Of the large number that has been calculated by state, the highest percentage is from the Kelantan, which is 14% equivalent 2,446 people. Meanwhile, for the state with the lowest percentage of accident is Wilayah Persekutuan Putrajaya, which is 0% equivalent 10 people only. The number of accident for state of Johor as much as 11% equivalent 1,551 people. For Kedah is 9% equivalent 1,306 people. For Negeri Sembilan is 8% equivalent 1,158 people. For Perak is 12% equivalent 1,669 people. For Perlis is 2% equivalent 353 people. For Pahang is 6% equivalent 815 people. For Melaka is 2% equivalent 357 people. For Penang and Terengganu has a same percentage, which is but different total of accident, which is 611 people and 660 people. For Selangor is 10%, equivalence 1,541 people. For Sabah is 7%, equivalent 962 people. For Sarawak is 6%, equivalent 842 people. For wilayah persekutuan Kuala Lumpur is 5%, equivalent 664 people. For the last is wilayah persekutuan Labuan is 0%, equivalent 43 people. For overall, our country is also set to be the country with the highest road accident rate. One of the main factor is in the increase in accident case in our country is due to the negligence of road user themselves. What I can say is that human cannot run away from making mistake, but mistake will cause the life of other to be destroyed as a result of ourselves. We must be careful on the road for the sake of common well-being. That's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and hi. My name is Siti Nur Hasriwani binti Siddiq. My matric number is A20A1965. I will explain about the numerical descriptive measures. Numerical descriptive measures have three types, which are measures of central tendencies, measures of position, and measures of variation. A measure of central tendency is a value that represents the center of a distribution. One of these measures is mean. Sum of data, entries divided by the number of entries. To find the mean, we should have the total frequency, multiply midpoint and divide the total frequency. So, the mean deaths and injuries in a road accident was 453.69. Secondly, median, the value that lies in the middle of the data when the data set is ordered. First step, we must determine the location of the median class. Therefore, the median class is 70,276. Determine the lower class boundary of median class. Therefore, lower boundary for class 70,276 is 6.5. Determine class width. Therefore, class width for class 70,276 is 270. Determine cumulative frequency before median class and determine frequencies of the median class. Therefore, the median is 438.5. Mod, the data entry that occurs with the greatest frequency. Determine the location of the modal class based on the highest frequency. Therefore, the mod class is 277 till 546. Determine the lower class boundary of median class and determine class width. Determine the difference between the frequency of modal class. The frequency of the class before modal class. Determine the differences between frequency of modal class and the frequency of the class after modal class. The highest deaths and injuries in road accident are 80.1. Measures of position. To determine the measurement of position, the data must be start from lowest to highest. A quartile is one of 3 points that divide a data set into 4 equal groups. Therefore, values of first quartile is 222.5 and third quartile is 600.5. The interquartile range is 378. A measure of variation is some parameter attempt to describe the amount of variation between random variables. The range of a data is the difference between the maximum and minimum data entries in the set. To find the range, we must have maximum data entry minus minimum data entry. Therefore, the range for deaths in a road accident is 1618. Variance measures how far a data set is spread out. It is mathematically defined as the average of the square differences from the mean. The square root of the variance is the standard deviation. While variance gives a rough idea of spread, the standard deviation is more concrete and it indicates the exact distance from the mean. Therefore, the sample variance is about 99282.157 and the sample standard deviation is about 350.09.
Assalamualaikum and hi everyone, my name is Hazira binti Mahazer and my metric number is A20A2105. I will be presenting the statistical analysis using software. The first one is numerical descriptive measure, which is measure of central tendency. A central measure is a single value used to describe a set of data by identifying the central position within the set of data. Each central tendency has its own meaning. For example, mean is the sum of all value divided by the total number of value in a data set. Following that, median is the middle value in a data that is ordered accordingly. If a data set has an even number of value, the mean of the two middle value is the data set's median. Finally, mode. Mode is the most common value in a data set. In some cases, a data set may contain multiple modes, while in others, no mode is present. Next, SPSS. SPSS is a reducing pieces of software that research scientists primarily use to help them process important data in simple steps. Based on the distribution of shape that has been made, we can tell that the number of injuries and death accidents reported by state in Malaysia in 2018 is a right-skewed distribution. Hypothesis testing is a process that uses some sample data and probability theory to determine whether or not a hypothesis is reasonable and should not be rejected. To test the validity of the assumption, we must select the sample from the population, compute sample statistics, and accept or reject the hypothesis based on certain decision rules. So there are 5 steps in hypothesis testing. The first one is specify the null hypothesis. The null hypothesis or HO is a declaration that there is no effect, relationship, or difference between the two or more groups or factors. So the null hypothesis would be the mean data of injuries and death is 457.03. The second step is specify the alternative hypothesis. The alternative hypothesis or H1 is the assertions that there is a difference or effect. This is usually the hypothesis that the researcher is attempting to prove. The alternative hypothesis is the mean data of injuries and that is not 457.03 because at least one of the means is different from the others. The third step is to set the significant level. Significant level is represented by the Greek letter alpha is usually set at 0.05. This means that when the null hypothesis is true, there will be a 5% chances of accepting the alternative hypothesis. The lower significant level, the greater the burden of proof required to reject the null hypothesis or to support the alternative hypothesis. So the significant level are denoted by alpha equals to 0.05. Step number 4 is test statistic and corresponding value, p-value, and the last step is to make the conclusion. So to test the statistic and p-value and to make the conclusion, we decided to use the t-test analysis and also ANOVA analysis. So t-test is an inferential statistic that is used to see if there is significant difference in the mean of two groups that are related in some way. Based on the t-test analysis, the mean for the number of injuries is 592.86, while the mean for the number of deaths is 447.5. Next, the variance for injuries is stated 65,120.93, higher than the variance of death when the variance of deaths and injuries were recorded respectively 14,545.44 and 80,333.5. Next, the number of observations is 14 for both injuries and deaths because the data were taken from the same state. The t-stat is 1.145, while the t-critical for one tail and two tail were recorded 1.711 and 2.064. The p-value for one tail is 0.132, while the p-value for two tail is 0.264. Since 1.1446 is smaller than 2.0639, I would fail to reject HO and say that the data support HO and the number of injuries and deaths can be considered equal. The p-value of 0.264 is larger than alpha, so we fail to reject HO and say that the data support HO. The number of injuries and deaths can be considered equal. So lastly is ANOVA analysis. ANOVA is a statistical method that extracts the observed variance data from the various components to be used for additional experiment. A one-way ANOVA is used by 3 or more data classes to collect information on the relationship between dependent and independent variables. Based on the ANOVA table, the variance for the number of deaths is 145,454.4, while the variance for the number of deaths is 80,333.5. The p-value is 0.263. Since 0.263 is higher than the alpha level, which is 0.05, therefore we accept that the null hypothesis and conclude that there is no difference in the number of injuries and deaths.
Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. My name is Adibah binti Abu Bakar. My metric number A20A2100. I would like to present about correlation analysis. Correlation is a statistical approach for determining how closely two variables are connected. When change in one variable to tend to be accompanied by consistent and predictable change in the other variable, a connection occurs. The numerical value of the correlation measures the degree of association, the strength or consistency of the correlation. The relationship between the state influenced the rate of death and injuries that occurred during accidents in 2018. The state of Johor showed that the injury rate was 574 people, while the accident involved 977 people. The state of Kedah showed that the injury rate was 797 people, while the accident involved 509 people. Next, the state of Kelantan showed that the injury rate was 1,626 people, while the accident involved 420 people. Negeri Sembilan showed that the injury rate was 796 people, while the accident involved 362 people. Perak showed that the injury rate was 1,006 people, while the accident involved 693 people. Apart from that, the state of Perlis showed that the injury rate was 289 people, while the accident involved 64 people. The state of Pahang showed that the injury rate was 330 people, while the accident involved 485 people. The state of Melaka showed that the injury rate was 166 people, while the accident involved 191 people. The state of Penang showed that the injury rate was 221 people, while the accident involved 319 people. Next, the state of Terengganu showed that the injury rate was 385 people, while the accident involved 275 people. Next, the state of Selangor showed that the injury rate was 495 people, while the accident involved 1,046 people. The state of Sabah showed that the injury rate was 664 people, while the accident involved 298 people. Sarawak showed that the injury rate was 509 people, while the accident involved 333 people. The state of Wilayah Persekutuan Kuala Lumpur state that the injury rate was 442 people, while the accident involved a total of 222 people. Meanwhile, the state of Wilayah Persekutuan Labuan showed that the injury rate was 31 people, while the accident involved 12 people. Finally, the state of Wilayah Persekutuan Putrajaya showed that the injury rate was 10 people, while the accident involved 7 people. At first, by using Excel, we use the 95% confidence interval, that is 0.05 significant levels to the confidence interval, that the test value that we pick is 0. Therefore, at the 95% confidence interval for the number of injuries and deaths are 129.132. As it is one sample t-test, it shows the difference of the number of injuries and deaths are 24.
Hello, Assalamualaikum. My name is Muhammad Akmal bin Azhari. My number metric A20A2171. So today, I want to present about the theoretical modeling. Is the death and injuries in a road accident reported by State Malaysia in 2018. So in this data, they collect data resource investigation and the enforcement of a traffic department in the Royal Malaysia Police. Okay, next, linear relation finds two straight line called the least squares regression line, the best replacement observation in the variable data set. So suppose y is a dependent variable and the x is a independent variable. The population relation line is a y b0 b plus b1 x. So the least squares principle is a 2 obtain b0 and b1. So the equation to determine b0 and b1 this the question the answer is 0.75. So this is the answer based on the proceed data in the table above. The proposed value of every coefficient can be like this. B1 answer 0.75 and the constant B0 can be 15355 0.40. So this is the answer. So from the theoretical model above, it can be said that without any internal influence, independent variable, the total score will be 15355.7.40, and for every 1 unit increase in the number of people deaths and injuries, the total score will increase by 0.75, will other independent variables remain unchanged. Okay, next, this look reasonable as deaths and injuries in a road accident possibly can contribute to the increase in the number of a total score. It was mentioning that Malaysia had a high car ownership due to excessive dependence on the private vehicles. Thus, more interaction on the roads implies higher incident likelihood of the use. Next, this can improvement of the public transportation system will certainly be useful towards the socio-economic conditions. Increase the public transport will not only lessen the traffic congestion and the accident exposure, but will provide more rational choice for road use, creating a sustainable nation transportation for the future. So that's all for me. Thank you.
The last part, which is conclusion, what our group can conclude is we use some methods such as data arrangement, graphical method, a measure of tendency, and measure of position to calculate the data of the statistic of deaths and injuries in road accident reported by states Malaysia 2018. Therefore, we learn that using statistics is very important today. To solve data related problem, such as our topic of death and injuries in Malaysia in road accident reported by state Malaysia 2018. For me, statistics is also known as a form of mathematical analysis that use quantified model, representation, and synopsis for a set of experimental data or real-life study. In this assignment, we also learn about central inclination measure, variance measure, and position measure. In addition, from the data we studies, we also analyze using SPSS output. We also analyze and interpret the data using ANOVA analysis, multiply regression, confidence interval, and Pearson correlation. That's all from our group. Thank you.